Okay, I got all my stuff set up. Spent several hours figuring out the content. Got the new camera. Checking my lapel mic to see if it works now. And in just a couple of seconds, you're going to see me talking about leading in times of virus. And I'm showing you the kind of the man behind the curtain because I want you to understand that there's a really big difference between planning something and setting something up as a musician who's played for at least 15 years in divey, smoky little bars all over the place. I know that it's one thing to get there and set up all your stuff and do a sound check and everything. And it's totally different when you actually turn things on and start to play before an audience. When we're talking about disasters and catastrophes and stuff like that, a very similar kind of process obtains. Organizations and people will spend a fair amount of time, a lot of times not as much time as they need to, but they'll spend a fair amount of time getting ready, planning, making contingency plans, checking all of the cables, checking the microphone, checking the lighting and all that, scripting the video, and then you actually start. Okay, so now that I've adjusted the heck out of it and tried to get this image off of the back where I wanted to write because of the reflection, trying to get the reflection, I've wasted the entire morning, and I'm going to go outside where the lighting is natural and everything's okay. I'm going to use a different camera without the good audio, and I'm going to shoot this video. Why am I not surprised? I'm not surprised because this is the way the world works. You plan stuff step by step by step when it's somewhat complex and you haven't done it 1,000 times before, and then you go to roll it out and all sorts of crap happens. And you have to figure out a way to adapt to that. That's something we do in daily life, but when you get into a big blow up, when you get to sitting where things are really unpredictable, where things are really messed up, that whole dynamic goes to a new level, and you as an individual, but also you as a leader and a collective as an organization have to learn how to deal with that. I've been studying that process for just about my entire career in one way or another. And so I can't say I have any solutions, but there are some predictable things I can tell you about that hopefully might help you to find your own path, your own particular solution. So we're going to go outside, set up a different camera, and start again. Well, I don't know if I'm going to have enough light to shoot this, but we're going to take a shot at it in any event. What I was talking about inside a couple of weeks ago was that you plan and you try to get things to work, and they don't always work the way you expect them to be. And in fact, that's why I'm out here. I had to improvise something. So I came back here, and despite the compressor noise and the fact that we're running out of light and everything, I'm going to try to at least provide a few ideas in very few words. Here is the idea. When a disaster is going to come, the first thing you do is you try to plan for it. And to plan for it, you need to have someone, preferably who's kind of like me, who's kind of neurotic and afraid of everything and worried. What if this happens? What if that happens? We need a plan A, we need a plan B, we plan C, D. We need lots of resources, and we need to get everything lined out as precisely as we can. And in fact, the Germans did that literally for 20 years before they invaded France in the First World War. They planned everything right down to the trains, when a certain train would leave, who would be on it, where the armaments would be, what routes they would take, where they would attack, how long that was supposed to take. All those steps clear right up to Paris. And they actually got about halfway through France, and then everything stalled, which is normal, because unless you're God, most plans will eventually kind of bog down. What you need usually then is the kind of leader we all see in all the movies and we think is so great, and that's like a Douglas MacArthur or a George Patton or somebody like that. Somebody who says, I don't care about the plans, come on, get moving, we got to do this, we got to do that, damn the torpedoes, move immediately, this take charge, inspiring, if not inspiring, usually they're kind of a pain in the butt leader. That forces things to happen. By the way, Stephen Jobs was much that kind of a leader. He absolutely, he decided he wanted something, and he just pushed and bugged people and hounded people, people he knew, people he didn't know, until it actually happened. That is a viable leadership role, and you have to have it sometimes, particularly in a disaster when your plans aren't working. Those guys aren't good planners. They usually don't listen to anybody else. They think they're God. And if they're lucky enough to be able to actually push things through to where they get executed, they become great heroes, which is fine. Just retire them and get rid of them, because otherwise they're going to drive you crazy, which is why they fired Stephen Jobs once or twice, and William Durant, who founded General Motors, once or twice. After this kind of leader arrives and does his bit, he will drive everybody crazy, he will break things, he will violate protocol, he will violate rules, and unless he actually succeeds in making things work, people will wake up and they say, guess what? The plan didn't work, this leader is a nutcase, and we're looking at the abyss, we're looking at a disaster, at collapse. And if you're lucky, sometimes, in the case of World War I, in the French case, it was the General Pétain, if you're lucky, you'll have somebody who's been watching all this and knowing it was going to break down. And a lot of times they were actually involved in trying to execute what the planners told them to do, or what their take-charge boss told them to, and realized it didn't work. And they've been watching from a corner, and they say, okay guys, let's calm down, let's talk to the people who've been in the trenches, who've been executing this thing, let's see what's left over, let's assess our losses rationally, let's back off and see if there's anything that we can do to recuperate the pieces, to pick up the last pieces. That kind of leader is a very important leader, and you desperately need to have one waiting in the wings in a disaster like this, because a lot of times that's your salvation. A lot of military experts say if had it not been for Pétain, the Germans basically would have won the First World War. So as a leader, if you can possibly be aware of that, you're probably going to fall into one of the three categories. You're probably not going to be all three. But if you can be aware of that and surround yourself with people who do have those three skill sets, and be willing to take a back seat when need be, or actually to say, hey, I'm a good planner. When we roll this out, I'm going to have somebody else do it. Or I'm a take charge person, I'm going to get somebody else to plan, and when the plan breaks down, I'll say, well, somebody else made it, and I tried as hard as I could. Now we're going to bring somebody else on to do the third piece. It kind of corresponds to what psychologists see in human beings when they react to stress. There is an alarm phase where, oh my goodness, what's going on? And then we say, oh, this is terrible. We have to call forth our power of resistance. And so after the alarm phase, we have a resistance phase where we dedicate all our energies and focus all our energies on getting over the crisis, and then at some point you have an exhaustion phase where we just give it up. Well, at the exhaustion phase you have to be able to go back, rest a little bit, breathe deeply, do some meditation, and come back and say, okay, what's left? Is there anything that we can do to cut our losses and save some of this still? Very, very important cycle that you need to be aware of when you're dealing with a disaster.